you and I both have an understanding of what pay-per-view is and what the fight world should be. And there was one thing that I did respect about the UFC when they first came out, which it was a real simple question. The answer to that age-old question, which one of these styles is actually going to win in a fight? If it was 1 against 1, if it was karate against jiu-jitsu, if it was Muay Thai against Eskrima, if it was, Krav Maga against sumo wrestling. I did appreciate that. I don't know, what are your thoughts on that? Because I thought that was excellent, besides the fact that they didn't have rounds.
Those days are gone already, though. Think about it. A sumo guy comes in and fights a karate guy, and that just doesn't happen. Now it's a well-trained athlete fights another well-trained athlete. Whether your school is called a Muay Thai school or your school is a Jiu-Jitsu school, that Muay Thai school is still doing wrestling takedown, submission holds, and submission defenses. The the Jiu-Jitsu school is now doing Muay Thai, wrestling. It's the same. No school that's trying to make it out there does one disciple, and that's it. Because if you do, you're in the bleachers watching the fights. You're watching it on pay-per-view. You're not involved with it.
That's true, and the honest truth is you're right. It's the same thing as if you were cutting yourself out in marketplaces and segments of advertising, let's say. And I always found it ridiculous. There are some people that they'll only advertise to this group of people. Like, well, you're so comfortable with them and you understand that so well. That's great. That's fine and dandy. But what about the rest of the pie?
Right.
You know what I mean?
You're losing out on that.
Exactly. Believe me, they're screwing themselves on that, and it's money that's being left on the table just because they're only thinking in one direction. But you're absolutely right. These guys are getting more and more diversified. You remember Tiger Showman? Mm-hmm. Now it's not Tiger Showman's karate anymore. It's Tiger Showman's MMA.
Exactly.
And in fact, they even have 1 or 2 guys I think that actually fight pro, don't they?
There's a few guys that fight in, I believe, Strikeforce and Bellator. I'm not sure if they've got anybody in UFC yet, but eventually they will.
Yeah.
Just like any good school, you get, your students just keep on progressing, getting better and better. Like you said, it's no longer. It used to be Kentucky Fried Karate. It was like a franchise. People were like, they would laugh at it. Now, Tiger Showman schools are very respected.
Yeah, they should be. Listen, these guys are. I've seen actually some of their training, especially with the kids. I love watching the kids train. It's so good. It's so important. Don't you agree to get them started young? The discipline that they get from it, their overall, it just bleeds into everything that they do. It really does.
Without a doubt.
And not for nothing, I think that it makes the kids better kids. I think they become less, shall we say, aggressive. They're taught to channel that anger and do it the right way instead of causing pain.
Right. Well, that's one of the things I do like about Tiger Showman schools and a lot of the other schools too is they still have a belt structured class for the kids. So they have a goal. When you just teach Muay Thai or Jiu-Jitsu, and Jiu-Jitsu has a belt structure also, but if you just teach MMA style, there's no belt structure. A lot of kids, they think they're badasses, and after a year or two, they decide, I'm going somewhere else, I'm a badass already. Where with the martial arts structured system with belts, it gives them a goal, and they continue to train, and then a lot of them stay after they've reached that goal, and they want the higher ranks, and they keep on going. I started with my school, like I said, my boys were just born, my 19-year-old was just born when I opened up my school, and my wife was actually pregnant when the school was open. And I had kids that I trained back then that were 4 or 5 years old that are now adults with kids. They're married themselves, they have children themselves, and some of their kids are now doing martial arts.
Exactly, exactly. And that's the beauty of watching the kids.
Oh, it is. You watch these kids and they're like magnets. You throw something at them, they suck it up and they do it.
Absolutely.
Adults, oh my God, they're a pain in the ass. You got to tell them 5
And it's hard to teach them, you're right. You're right, because that's when you get them young, believe me, and especially with languages too. Yeah. Especially with languages because they are still in that mode. They're still sucking up everything. Sure. Their mind is working and firing. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Well, listen, guys. I mean, let's put it this way. Before I sign off, I always like to ask, some kind of off-school question. But today we're going to ask something I think is a little bit more apropos. First of all, what do you think of Rocky Road's 31 Flavors?
Dynamite, brother.
Absolutely. God bless those bastards, man. I swear we need some of that crap, though. I'm telling you. And then on a serious point, though. On a serious point, though, I will ask you this, though, because this is something I think that people would like to know. What are your thoughts on pugilistic sports in general? What do you see in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I mean, I feel MMA is going to surpass boxing eventually. There's no doubt about it. The only thing that might slow us down is once you have one, let's say a monopoly, you have one group, and that's all you have, and there's nowhere else for the fighters to go, it's going to take a lot longer. there's not just one group in boxing. You know them all. The WBA. I mean, there's just so many of them.
It's way too much.
There is too many, possibly, but at least there's avenues for these fighters to go to different places.
Which is true. Which is true. But they do want to get it. And you're right here. Absolutely. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go for it. You're right.
You had Pride. You had IFL. You had Bellator. You had Strikeforce. You had the UFC. Now it's getting all into one pot. And now you have the UFC and Strikeforce, and you have Bellator.
That's it.
And eventually Bellator might get bought out too. You never know. But Pride is no longer there. WEC is no longer there. So a lot of the fighters, if they didn't make it yet, or if they did make it and they came down a couple notches and got let go, where do they go? There's a lot of shows are smaller, not really paying these guys what they're worth, and it's tough. Shows like what you guys are doing, this is great. You're building these guys up. You're gonna see fighters in this event move on. I watched some of the training tapes of the guys you have on your show. I don't see them sitting around for a long time. I think you're going to see them move up, just like the show in Jersey that we have. One of our shows has put 63 fighters in the UFC. 63 fighters.
That's good.
And that's East Coast. I mean, East Coast has a lot of tough kids.
And they keep about 200. It's their roster, actually.
Yeah.
They keep about
They've
200
got over 250 right now.
Oh, so they're at 250.
Yeah.
Hey, good.
Well, because don't forget that they did those other weight classes.
Oh, that's true. That's right.
The 135,
that's right.
145, 155.
Yep. Well, listen, we're actually going to be building that up also, but that's obviously an interview for me. Like I said, I'm going to sign this one off with my brother over here. I love Dan. Like I said, I won't do MMA fights without him. Like I said, we have the best in the game, and he's definitely got the right opinions. His head is definitely on there right, and like I said, I love you, man. I couldn't agree more with everything that you say, and I'm proud to have you on, man. Always, always.